Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. The first Gothic game is almost 24 years old, and even though it looks very outdated by today's standards, this RPG still holds up incredibly well. It has a living and breathing open world that's still fun to explore, down-to-earth setting, amazing character progression, and pretty high replay value, amongst other things. I mean, sure, it's still beginner unfriendly as ever, with one of the most awkward control schemes you're ever going to experience, very outdated visuals, and it's janky as all hell. But once you get over that hump, you're in for a very unique RPG experience that you won't find anywhere else.
Welcome to the colony!
Unless the Gothic Remake manages to rekindle the old flame, and by the looks of things, it seems like they're on a good path to do so. If this turns out to be a high quality remake, I legitimately think it could shock a lot of players who didn't play the original RPG. That's a big if, because Alchemy Interactive has a big mountain to climb. Piranha Bytes, the original developer of Gothic Trilogy, sadly had to close down in summer of 2024 after Embracer Group fumbled the bag of $2 billion. Yikes. Piranha Bytes wasn't the only studio that had to close down because of this colossal mistake. I made a whole video about the history of Piranha Bytes and I included that topic as well, so if you want to learn more about it, check out that video. So technically, Gothic Remake is the only thing we have left from this IP, even though it's not being developed by the original developer. Piranha Bytes was working on the last entry in Elex series, which would be Elex 3, but sadly, we'll never get to experience that game as well because the studio closed down. On the bright side, Gothic Remake seems like it's going to be a faithful recreation of the original game, which puts the emphasis on the most important features from this classic 2001 RPG. So, what are those features, and why I think this game could shock a lot of new players? Well, I'm glad you asked. Bitch. What most RPGs and open world games in general struggle with is creating a living and breathing open world. Only a handful of studios even bother with such attention to detail, and those that do usually have a massive budget for their game. A much bigger budget that Piranha Bytes ever had, so being able to pull off a game like Gothic all the way back in 2001 is nothing short of a miracle. It's not exactly a lightning in a bottle because the sequel was arguably even better, but that's a topic for another video. Gothic's game design is filled with small but very important features that serve to depict a very believable place. I would even argue that this is not attention to detail, these are mandatory features for creating a believable open world environment. We have seen so many open world games in the past 20 years that just lack something very important in their game design. They usually feel very soulless or artificial, for the lack of a better word. Despite those issues, I personally enjoy some of these open world games, but not for the same reason I loved Gothic RPGs. Gothic had a small but very dense open world that's really fun to explore, but it's also very dangerous for a brand new prisoner. This is a place where all NPCs have a daily schedule and appropriate reactions to players' action. More importantly, all of these features make logical sense, which speaks volume to the player. If you draw your weapon for no reason, people get nervous. If you block the path of someone, they get pissed off.
Let me pass!
If they see you steal stuff, they wanna fight you. You can get knocked down and robbed if you're a bad boy, or if you talked shit to a wrong person.
Ah, a fight!
I mean, what else you can expect from a place full of convicts? Talking with people in this game will make you feel like you're in a Quentin Tarantino's movie, because almost everyone is a jackass. It's a place that could easily exist without a player character, and you have to adapt to this world, not the other way around. You're not treated as the hero in the story. Even when you technically reach that status, people you meet in the sequel will just laugh in your face if you claim that you're the one who did all those heroic deeds in the first game.
Listen, the city is threatened by dragons.
That can't be true. Another lunatic.
The rough beginning of the game, when everything can kill you in a few hits, and when people treat you like trash, is by design. It's a very important step of creating a strong sense of progression by making the player struggle a bit, but even so, this never felt forced. It's just in the nature of this hostile environment, and the player has to do his best to adapt. Your character holds a one-handed sword with two hands because he lacks experience. The combat feels very awkward at first for the same reason, and when you start improving these skills, it starts feeling a lot better and much snappier. You can't just open the menu and increase the skills, you have to find the right trainer that will teach you the skill. Once again, all of that makes perfect sense. Even the UI is very minimalistic, so it doesn't get in your way a lot, so you can absorb this world with little to no distractions. You get brand new animations to complement your new skills, and suddenly the awkward nature of this control scheme starts to make a lot more sense. Every single level you get in this game makes you feel excited, which is not something you can say for a lot of RPGs. Same goes for getting new weapons and armor. It's a huge deal in this game and not so easy to come by like in many other RPGs. You really have to work for it by joining one of 3 factions. In other words, the world of Gothic is very immersive, the way it works makes sense, and you feel great when you start making some real progress in this unforgiving world. Yeah, like I said, Alchema has a huge mountain to climb with the remake. When we talk about immersion in games, it can be a very subjective topic. However, I just pointed out some of the features which made the world of Gothic so believable and immersive, and even after 24 years, you're going to struggle to find similar features in other RPGs. I mean, when you think about it, it's very hard to convince players that they're not playing a game, but Gothic somehow did it so effortlessly back in 2001. No matter how good your game looks and no matter the budget, if your game lacks some of the features we talked about, I think it can end up being very soulless. And speaking of souls, when someone mentions action RPGs, people usually refer to Diablo-like RPGs or Souls-like RPGs. Even though I'm a fan of these genres, I think both are a bit oversaturated today, especially when it comes to Souls-likes. Let me try to give you an example of what I mean by using a game that was not a Souls-like, even though it kinda looked like it in a way. The best recent example of this would be Dragon's Dogma 2. I gave this game a very positive review after I beat it twice, once normally and another time with no pawns, as a warrior of course. What? There were a lot of people who didn't know what to expect from this game, and on the surface level it kinda looks a little bit like Souls-like, even though that couldn't be farther from the truth. I watched a lot of videos and streams of Dragon's Dogma 2, and a lot of people struggled at the beginning because they approached it as an action Souls-like RPG. It was basically like watching people learning how to walk again. It was very entertaining. Gothic Remake doesn't have anything to do with Souls-likes or even Dragon's Dogma, but I think we could have a very similar situation here. New players can easily get caught off guard because of the totally different action RPG experience. Now, the way I see it, it can only go 2 ways here. Either Alchemy Interactive delivers a very high quality remake that will totally blow you away, or it ends up being very bad. I think there is a very low possibility that this game will end up feeling mid, as the kids would say, because of the nature of this game design. Because if Alchemy ruins even one of these major features, it could totally destroy the game, if you ask me. One of my biggest concerns is the AI and how deep it's going to be. Daily schedules of NPCs and their behavior in general is a huge part of Gothic games and one of the main reasons why their worlds feel so alive. But here's another pretty big concern that a lot of people have about the remake. One of the biggest concerns for the remake is the combat system. Now, the combat in the original game took some time to get used to, and like I said before, it starts feeling a lot better when your character gets better at combat. It's very rough in the beginning, and we could argue once again that's by design, but that design can also turn a lot of people away. The clunky nature of this combat system and the unforgiving world creates a huge barrier to entry. Come to think of it, this is a big paradox, because the same thing which makes the gameplay so satisfying also makes a lot of new players quit the game early. Gothic RPGs are definitely not for everyone, they have a specific target audience. However, the remake is certainly going to be a lot more accessible than the original by default. Not because I think Alchema will introduce some hand-holding features or some in-depth tutorials. The remake will just have a much more modern support for mouse and keyboards, as well as controller support. Gothic Remake is coming out on consoles as well, and not so long ago we finally had the chance to see how the original Gothic plays on Nintendo Switch. Not only the first game, but the second Gothic game also came out on Switch. Ironically, this is probably the most intuitive and easiest way to play old games nowadays, unless you want to mod the game on PC. Both Gothic games work great with a controller on Switch, much better than I expected. I was very happy to see these games on a new platform because more people should know about them. I truly believe that we need more RPGs like this, but at the end of the day, that's for you to decide. The audience is the most important and it has the most power. Gothic games have a strong community, even though it's definitely not massive like for some other well-known RPGs. A community that knows exactly what they want. If Alkima fails with the remake, they're going to have a lot of angry 30-year-olds on their neck, including me. In 2022, we got to see a huge Gothic project come to life called The Chronicles of Murtana Arkolos. It was received with open arms, not only because it's a total conversion mod for Gothic 2, but because it's a freaking amazing new game. It had a peak of almost 10k people on Steam, which is kinda crazy for a total conversion mod for such an old game. Some brand new games with millions of dollars in marketing couldn't even reach similar numbers. If Gothic Remake turns out to be great, these numbers will be much higher of course. In the past couple of years, we could see a couple of brand new RPGs that were described as Gothic-like. Drova would be the best example of this. This game had a lot of elements which made Gothic games so great, and I only hope we'll see even more of these games after Gothic Remake drops. But in order for that to be the case, Gothic Remake has to be a great game. We came a long way since we first saw that playable teaser. That was basically like a huge testing ground for the remake, and THQ and Alkima Interactive used it as a big marketing strategy as well. They collected a ton of feedback from that playable teaser, then they disappeared for a while, and then they came back with a brand new gameplay video. People had the chance to try out the new demo for Gothic Remake in Gamescom 2024, and I was actually supposed to be there, but my stupid car broke down in the worst possible moment. But if someone from THQ or Alkima Interactive wants me to try out the demo now, I wouldn't complain, you know. Anyway, the reception for this playable demo and the trailer were pretty positive, much better than the first playable teaser. I was very skeptical about the Gothic Remake in general before this new gameplay trailer drops. The thing is, even this quote-unquote newest gameplay demo was pretty outdated even back then, so there is a high possibility that the game looks much better now, or even back then. Wishful thinking, maybe, but it sounds logical to me. We are still patiently waiting for the new info about the game, maybe some new gameplay videos, and finally the release date. But if I had to guess, I think we're going to get a Gothic Remake in 2026, probably around summer. Gothic games left a huge mark on me personally and on a lot of people who play these games. Up to the point where it almost ruined all other RPGs for me because I kept searching for similar features and I constantly got disappointed. I'm not saying there are no other great RPGs out there and I played a ton of them, but very few of them had actual Gothic-like features. So I really wish they take their time with the remake and polish it as much as possible. Even though I'm still very concerned for this remake, I'm a very optimistic person, so I hope for the best. Yeah, that served me well in the past.
Another lunatic.
Anyway, tell me your opinion about Gothic Remake in the comments below. Do you think it looks good or not? Let me know. Anyway, make sure you subscribe if you like my content. And if you're truly feeling generous, you can always become a YouTube member or a Patreon. Massive thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see you in the next one.